Hello, poodling around us. Today we're talking Cumberland and Westmorland wrestling. Have you ever seen it? Have you any idea what it is? Well, probably the best place in the world to introduce yourself to this truly English regional traditional sport is Grasmere Lakeland Sports and Show. At the time of launch of this podcast, that is just 1 week away, on Sunday, August the 25th, 2024. As you'll hear in this podcast, Grasmere is almost the spiritual home of Cumberland and Westmorland wrestling, and the bouts there are the ones to win if you take part in this type of combat sport. We've always viewed this as a sport that needs to be cherished from the point of view of heritage. However, as we will also hear in this podcast, it seems that the younger generation are doing that of their own accord, embracing it in a big way. In fact, I found so much enthusiasm for the sport when I started to delve into the Cumberland and Westmorland wrestling community that's around Grasmere Sports, that this is just part one of my conversations. Part two will be with you shortly. This part one features interviews with Linda Scott and Robert Wharton, both organisers of the sport through the Cumberland and Westmorland Wrestling Association. Then we have another interview with a young woman who's been involved with this sport for many years. But let's start with Linda and Robert and see what they have to tell us. Hi, Linda and Robert. Please could you possibly tell us about the origins of Cumberland and Westmorland wrestling?
Well, we don't know exactly, but we sort of believe that it dates back to the 9th century, when Irish captive slaves were under Viking charge, and they sort of showed the wrestling style to the Vikings. And then when they invaded the Cumbrian coast, they introduced it to their new colonies.
Wow. That's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what we believe, but it's been well documented for the last 2 centuries. But we just have to go on what little bits of information. Mainly Roger Robson, who was the president for a few years. He did a lot of research and sort of came up with that.
Oh, I see. And was this style of wrestling once practiced all over the UK? And where does it take place now within the UK?
Well, I'll pick that one up. But I mean, there is other styles of wrestling in the UK. There's a Cornish style, and up in Scotland they do a backhold, which is very similar to ours. But in terms of sort of traditional wrestling, there is just Cumberland and Western wrestling. It is just practiced in Cumberland, Westmorland, up in Northumberland, they have academy, and the other academies are in Kendal and sort of Lancaster. So really, it is just our sport in our area. Hey, it's open. Hey, if young uns or competitors want to enter, and they come from different parts of the country, they can certainly enter or get in touch with us and join our clubs. It's not it's open to anyone, male or female.
Okay. And does it have any synergy at all with the sort of wrestling that we used to see back on TV in the 1960s or the current WWE wrestling? And what are the rules?
Well, it's got no connection, has it, with the WWF or the old all-in wrestling that you used to see on a Saturday tea time on the TV. And the rules are very simple. I'll let Robert's an ex-wrestler, so Robert maybe explain the rules better.
Yeah, well, no, I mean there's no big daddy or giant haystacks in our sport, and I think our sport everyone is there to win. It's not for entertainment and sort of the made up type thing. It is proper, but it does give great entertainment. I mean, the rules are pretty similar, pretty simple. You take hold of someone where you take a hold round their back. Your head goes on the left-hand side of your opponent. Your chin goes on their shoulder. You take hold round the back with a grip called the butcher's grip, where you lock your fingers together. And then when the referee shouts on guard wrestle, it's the first wrestler to be tripped up, lifted up, put on the ground, and as soon as they make contact with the ground, they lose, and that's from the knee up, and so from the elbow. So if your head is the ground, your shoulder, your back, you've lost. And generally speaking, we do best out of 3. So it's very similar to judo. if you can think of judo, but with judo, you keep getting different grips, whereas with ours, you keep hold. If you leave go, you lose the bout.
Yeah, so, I mean, people will be watching judo at the moment at the Olympics, won't they? And in fact, when I've been watching some of the martial arts, I've been thinking, oh, there's a bit of synergy there with Cumberland and Westmorland wrestling. But something that you do have is a whole vocabulary around this sport, isn't it? With chips and buttocks and all sorts of other peculiar words. Could you tell us what these refer to?
Well, a hype is a lifting move where you lift your opponent, and there's variations of the hype. There's an inside hype, there's an outside hype, depending on where where and how you lift them. If they're on the outside of your hip, or if you lift them, with your knee sort of inside their legs.
There's the other ones where that you're instead of facing your man, you sort of turn your body into them, so you back into them, and that's when you can use the buttocks, where you are using your buttock to rotate your man over your back or over your buttock, and there's a cross buttock, there's a leg up buttock, there's a full buttock. Other terms are like if both men hit the ground at the same time, or both ladies, and the judges cannot make a decision, it's called a dog fall, whereby both men hit the ground at the same time. When you're wrestling and there is an odd number of wrestlers, there's always going to be a person that gets a bye into the next round. They're called the odd man. And obviously, as I said before, you start the wrestling with on guard, wrestle. So there's lots of little, let's say, peculiar words that are in our sport.
Mm. And also, a certain costume is very much associated with this sport, isn't it? Can you tell us about that and how that evolved?
Well, the costume, what it consists of is a vest or T-shirt, leggings, close-fitting leggings, which usually are the old-fashioned long johns, a pair of socks, and what we call a centerpiece, which is like a pair of pants or swimming trunks over the top of the leggings. They'd reckon that, like, years ago when men were working in the fields, at the end of the day, they would strip off, take their shirts off, take their trousers off, and they would be down to like a vest and long johns and the socks, and they would wrestle. And the ladies didn't think it was very right to be wrestling in the long johns, so they sort of introduced a centerpiece, and then from there on, they began to get a bit elaborate with them and do embroidery on them. And then embroidery sort of moved on to the vests as well. So, we do still have wrestlers turning out in traditional costume, and at some of the more sort of prestigious events, we have costume competitions. But we also have a more modern outfit in the wrestling academies, which is basically a T-shirt and a pair of shorts, and the wrestlers tend to get their names printed on the back, which is more modern. So you do see that a lot at the moment. We don't obviously want to put children off wrestling by stipulating they have to wear costume. So, we have introduced this modern outfit.
Yeah. And how many people are currently engaged with your association, taking part in this sport? And beyond your association, how many more exponents of this sport are there?
I would say currently engaged in the association. There's a board, the association board, and there will be 12 board members. We all act as judges and referees. There'll be another 20 volunteers that will judge and also run the events, organise the events, liaise with the agricultural shows, the local sports, the local fairs. We'll have 50 to 60 events during the summer, from the 1st of May through to the sort of end of October. Wrestling wise, for example, the under 12 years World Championship, which is held at Ambleside, had 30 entrants, 30 children, girls and boys entered that. I think there could be up to 100 active wrestlers within our association. Beyond our association, I mentioned the Cornish wrestlers. We also had a contingent of Icelanders come over. They're coming over twice this year. There'll be it's called Gleamer in Iceland. The Bretons in Brittany, they do a traditional Celtic wrestling style of their own. The Sardinians, the Spanish wrestlers from Lyon, Frieslanders in Holland. We get involved with the Celtic Wrestling Association, and we have championships with our sort of fellow competitors in Europe. That's every 4 years, youths and men's. It's our own association, but at the same time, in the 80s, with Roger Robson and Ted Douglason, we got involved with the European wrestlers and throwing the Scottish ones as well. So it's fantastic to test ourselves against our sort of European competitors. And the last time, Linda, we were the champions. We won it.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we won in Iceland. Yeah,
took a team to Iceland and won. So, well, they couldn't hold us, and I think Brittany are holding the event next year. So we'll probably take a team there again.
Okay, and how did you personally get involved with this?
My father was a wrestler in the 1960s. My dad actually won the under 15 years World Championship. And when the Young Farmers were looking for a wrestler to wrestle at the Young Farmers Field Day, because they run an event, the Young Farmers at Long Town put me in because they knew that my dad had done it and he would coach me. So I got in through that, went to Carlisle Academy after that because I got myself hooked. Wrestled through my youth and into my 20s. I went to Sardinia and France and wrestled. And also I won the under 15 years World Championship like my dad. And then my son's since won it as well. So that's how I got involved. And then obviously I thoroughly enjoyed the sport, and I'm trying to put a little bit back into it by joining the board with Linda.
And you, Linda, how did you get involved?
I was first involved. My partner was an ex-wrestler, guy that Robert just mentioned there, Ted Douglason, who was one of the instigators in the International Wrestling Federation. And I went along with him, and he sadly passed away in 1992. And I had just made friends and was supported by the wrestling community. Continued to go, and then ended up getting a job, doing the working on the table, and then on the governing board. And and they're just a great bunch of people, and I really, really enjoy the sport.
Mm. And, you sort of intimated at it there, but this sport is something that has traditionally attracted several generations of the same family, hasn't it? But how difficult is it to spread the love of this sport beyond the family network?
Well, we've always thought it's a bit of a problem, but one thing that really gave us a lot of confidence was last year, through the summer, when we don't usually have any indoor training. We thought, well, we'll just put a few free taster sessions on and spread the word with social media and see what happens. So we did 9 sessions, and we had 63 new faces come through the door. And we managed to hang on to 23 of them. And they're out there regularly wrestling. And one boy became the under-10s world champion this year at Penrith. So, in a year, he learned fast, and he's a champion.
Well, and one of the things with wrestling, it's relatively inexpensive. It's cheap to get into. You just need a pair of socks and a pair of shorts and a t-shirt. It's not like you sort of cricket where you a brand new cricket bat or even equine sport. It's relatively inexpensive, and you just turn up and have a go. And that's what I think the kids, they see the friends doing it, or they see it in action. Yesterday at Appleby Show, you just had people just coming around and say, "Can we have a go?" And I said, "Of course you can." We obviously get it, we do it properly. We get parental consent, but the day they just had a go, and you could just see them laughing and joking and just thoroughly enjoying it.
So I guess this was originally a sport for men only, wasn't it? So how long have women been involved, and what would you say to encourage any girl or woman who might just consider taking it up? What can they get out of it?
I think they can get a lot of confidence. Obviously, they exercise. It's a great sport, camaraderie. I mean, wrestling was never. It wasn't that females couldn't enter. It was just that it was never written in the rules that they couldn't. It wasn't kind of expected that a female would want to wrestle. But obviously, come sort of the end of the 90s, there was girls wanting to wrestle. And I can remember a girl from Scotland coming down and wrestling at Ambleside. And it was kind of frowned upon by some of the governing board at the time. And then we thought, well, maybe we should have female competitions. So if I'm right, I think the first female competitions were introduced in 2003 at Grasmere Sports. And we had 4 competitions, varying weights and ages. And in 2016, because it was becoming a lot more popular, we introduced 2 championships. So we've got a ladies 10 stone championship and then a ladies open weight championship.
And it's important to sort of stress that really there's 2 ways of categorising the contests, aren't there? It seems to me there's the age way and then there's a weight way once you get into the men's and ladies. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. And how many opportunities does a Cumberland and Westmorland wrestler get to win trophies during the course of a year? And is that a highlight, or is the important thing to be part of that community and part of the club?
I think both, but equally both. Yeah, equally both. I mean, to answer the first question, there's probably trophies at most events, and I think the kids they love to win a trophy and go and take it home and have the photo taken with it and show the parents, etc. So most events, like Appleby Show yesterday, had trophies for 3 or 4 of the events. The actual titles, we will have, I think there's 15 world championships, and we do class them as world championships because it's not done anywhere else in the world. From the under 10 years of age, under 12 years, under 15, under 18s. Then you've got the weight categories, 10.5 stone right up to heavyweights. Then you've got the ladies, 10 stones and open class. So them's the titles, the main ones. Then you've got the highlights. Grasmere obviously is a pinnacle to win there. Westland Show was a good one to win. Many as well. And but as I said before, yes, it's great to win. Yes, it's great to take up some prize money. But if you go to an event and you wrestle well and come third, and you're with your friends and part of the club, part of the community, entertain the crowd's cheering and clapping for you. If you come away with a third place, a bit of pocket money, that's just as good as anything. And you can see that with wrestlers, they're delighted to turn up. And these sports at these shows, we are one of the part of the entertainment for the spectators that come and come through the gate to watch. They come to watch the shows, for example. They come to watch the sheep and the cattle and the main ring entertainment. But we have the ring.
I think you're right, because, whenever I've been to Grasmere Sports, there's been about 4 banks of seating, but then probably about 3 rows of people all around the arena behind that trying to get a seat. So everybody's completely absorbed by it, aren't they? But, Grasmere Sports and Show has been staging the spectacle of Cumberland and Westmorland wrestling for over 150 years now. What is it that's special about that place as a wrestling arena?
It's in a, perfect position with the landscape all around you. One thing about Grasmere for me is you can sit and watch wrestling. You can look up the fell. You can see the fell race going up. You can see them coming back. You can take it all in and just, sit and have a lovely day. I mean, you don't always get the weather, but if you go prepared, yeah, it's just a fantastic day. And anyone that, is placed at Grasmere is highly honoured, because it is the pinnacle, as Robert said. But without wrestling, Grasmere Sports, to me, wouldn't be Grasmere Sports either. I think it's the main thing. It's the main sport at Grasmere.
Won under 15 years of age there, and I've won the 14 stones. And one year I went there and didn't do very well in wrestling, and it was in the years when they did have sports there, the running and the long jump, etc. I won the high jump. So I won the high jump at Grasmere Sports when I was 20, 1 meter 63, I think. So a bad day in the wrestling ring, but won the high jump. But no, it's a fantastic venue. As I say, it's very picturesque and just a great venue to wrestle at.
And there's a World Championship event there this year, isn't there? What is that? And do you think it's going to be fiercely contested?
It's the under-18s and 10 stone championship. And I think it will be fiercely contested. The thing is, we do have another championship for under-18s, but youths vary in size and stature. So it's nice to have this championship for the lighter weight boys, the under-18s. So yeah, there'll be a few just watching their weight and saving themselves for that event, I think.
And now there's also a poignant new trophy, isn't there, named in someone that you've mentioned a few times already in this interview, who I know did so much for the sport, didn't he? Could you tell us about Roger Robson, his impact and this new trophy?
Well, Roger was a very, very special man. He did a huge amount for wrestling. He was involved in the sport for over 70 years, I believe. He was taught by his father and his uncles. He came from a family of mole catchers. They weren't a very well off family, but they were. He was well looked after, and he studied hard, and he went to university, and he became an English school teacher. So he was great in many respects for the wrestling, because he took over writing the newspaper articles for the local papers. He was good with correspondence with the European wrestlers, and he was one of the founder members of the Carlisle Wrestling Club, which started in 1970. Roger himself was a Grasmere champion on 3 occasions, I believe. He never actually held a heavyweight, a world championship title, but he had plenty of wins, and say three Grasmere wins. Roger set off the development committee, which was a part of the governing board that was, thinking about ways to develop the sport. He encouraged female wrestling. Roger was the wrestling manager at Grasmere Sports for a few years, and it was Roger that was the instigator of the female competitions in 2003.
And was it his daughter or his granddaughter who?
Yes, his granddaughter won the ladies' event in 2019. His own son, he wrestled as well, and he would wrestle at Grasmere. He probably had some Grasmere wins, but yes, it was a fantastic day for Roger in 2019, because Roger had ill health that time, but I can remember seeing the beam on his face as he was stood, having his photograph taken with his granddaughter. Yeah.
How lovely. Yeah. And this trophy, there's a new trophy this year, isn't there?
Yeah.
Where will that be given?
We're using that for the under 12s class, which is it's a mixed entry, so it could be a girl or a boy that wins it. And we thought that was a good class to give it to, because he did encourage both the girls as well as the boys. His family will be present, and they will present the trophy at Grasmere. It'll be, all these children that are wrestling now, even as young as they are, they'll be thinking about it, and they'll be wanting to win it, because it'll be a huge honour, to hold for the first time to hold the Roger Robson Memorial Trophy.
Yeah, definitely. And can anyone go to Grasmere Sports and enter a wrestling competition? And what are the chances of them winning if they do? Do they get any sort of guidance before they start wrestling?
Yeah, anyone that comes along and says, what's it all about, and I would like to have a go. We tend to have, wrestlers have started to come to put their entries in. So we'll point out somebody that's a sort of similar size and stature, and say they'll show you the ropes, and that's the good thing for me. One of the good things I notice about wrestlers, they will pass on information. They're not cagey, they want to share the sport. They want to encourage newcomers. And so they will show them what to do, and then, they'll enter the competitions. There's not a big chance at Grasmere of someone winning that's never wrestled before, because you do sort of get the elite at Grasmere. But there's always the chance, maybe more so in the children, but yeah, I mean, they're very welcome to have a go. And I believe Grasmere this year is saying that a newcomer, someone that's never wrestled before, there's a prize for them, for the person that gets the furthest through the rounds. So, there's encouragement for people to have a go.
Yeah, definitely. And, what are your roles within the sport now? And what are your goals and objectives as an organisation?
Well, my role can vary. Mainly, I work on the table, as we call it, and that's taking the entries, doing the draw, sorting the prize money out, handing the trophies over to whoever's going to present them. But I do also do a bit of judging and a bit of refereeing. I tend to referee the girls' championships. And one thing at Grasmere that we have encouraged over the years is that female officials work on the female classes. So I'll be refereeing the ladies' events at Grasmere.
Robert, what's your role within the Cumberland and Westmorland Wrestling Association?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit older now, but I sort of retired from wrestling sort of mid-30s. And then with me boys wrestling, I was asked to go onto the board. So I've been a board member for several years now. And then last year I became chairman, succeeded Linda, who did a sterling job as chairman for many years. So I'm now chairman of the association. And with that, my jobs are obviously helping run that, putting face of wrestling, helping doing radio interviews, for example. And then on the day events, I'm a referee or a judge. And what I probably prefer doing is be on the microphone and trying to banter with the crowd and make sure the crowd are engaged and who's wrestling and maybe what they've done and how telling them about the buttocks and the chips and the style. So no, I like being on the microphone and keep an eye on the ladies on the table with the draw as well.
Yeah. And how important is it to keep this traditional sport alive, do you think?
Oh, it's very important. We've got to keep it going. I mean, it's an ancient sport. It's a great sport. That it's quite what would you say? How would you describe it? It's like a gentlemanly sport, I would say. There's the handshake before the start. There's the handshake when they finish. As I said earlier, wrestlers share their knowledge. You talk to people and you say they're involved in wrestling. A lot of people think it could be an aggressive sport. But it's not an aggressive sport. It's it's a beautiful sport. It's almost like gymnastic and a sort of even dancing at times. And yeah, it's just a great sport.
Without the sport, Cool West Wrestling, there'd be a large gap in the members and the wrestlers we have. There'd be a large gap in their activities. There'd be a large gap in the market in terms of shows, fairs, and sports. What are they going to put on to keep them traditional events going? So it all works hand in hand. We've got several wrestlers that's all they do, and it keeps them active, keeps them fit. And I know we call it Cumberland and Western Wrestling, but it's a traditional backhold wrestling. And if you look at the sports in the Olympics now, hey, that would be my dream that we could have some sort of backhold wrestling in the Olympics, and we could send some competitors from Britain. It's just bigger than if you look. It'd be very narrow if you just looked at it in terms of our sport. It does a lot more for our local community. We were into me and my brother, and it was me and Paul Gibson went into Stannick School and Bellevue Primary School and put on some wrestling there. And again, they just thought it was fantastic. It was a traditional sport. We went in there. The first 5-10 minutes, they were a little bit reluctant to have a go. But by the end of the session, with these primary school children that had never done it before, they were all wanting to have a go. And that's what it does. It involves people.
Yeah. And, we've talked about the Bretons and the Icelandic wrestlers, and I think they add a lot of colour, don't they, when they arrive at Grasmere? So is there any difference in their technique in any way to what somebody who has learnt this kind of backhold wrestling in Cumberland or Westmorland would actually, in the way that they would wrestle?
The Icelandic wrestlers use similar chips, similar buttocks, similar moves, similar trips, but they don't clasp round the back. They use a belt, which is fastened round the waist, and you grab hold of the belt. and you use the belt as leverage to lift and to twist and to put your man down. I think their traditional sport, they wrestle on wooden floors, which sounds painful to me. We wrestle on grass or in the winter on the mats. The Bretons, they use similar to a judo jacket, but it's a bit more tight fitting than the judo jacket, and they wrestle for a 5-minute bout. And in them 5 minutes, you've got to get your man down, and you score various points for getting them onto their shoulders, or pin them on the two shoulders. If you throw them and pin them on both shoulders, it's an automatic win. So it's whilst a Cumberland Western bout might last for 2 or 3 minutes, if it's cagey affair, it might last for 10 seconds if it's an all-out explosive affair. Whereas the Bretons, the Breton style is it's a lot of endurance because you've got to keep at it for 5 minutes. If after 5 minutes it's a draw, you go for another 2.5 minutes. So I was blown like a steam train when I did it for the very, very first time. It was hard work.
Sounds it. So they must find it quite different when they come and have this really quick what could be a really quick bout at, Grasmere or somewhere else. Because sometimes they can be on the floor within sort of seconds, can't they? So that was quite different for them.
That's the attraction to the French. There's no jacket, and they just get hold, and it could be all over. And the French have put on a backhold championship. They run a backhold championship in France, which where we've sent our competitors over and been successful. But and because it's so simple, you need some mats, some judges, and you can wrestle. It's easy to put on.
Now, finally, what would you say to anyone who's never seen this sport in action? Is it something that they should really check out and tick off their list of new experiences?
Yes, I think so. I mean, you just see how people get captivated. I've seen at shows, the commentator will say, hands up anybody that's never seen this sport before. And you do get a few, every time. And they've stood and they've watched it for, an hour, 2 hours, sometimes even 3 hours, if we have a lot of wrestlers. And they want to know more about it, and they'll come to the table and they'll ask if we've got a list of fixtures so they can go and watch it somewhere else, Or they might have a grandson or a nephew or a niece that they think would like to have a go, and they'll come for details of the clubs where we train. And yeah, it's captivating spectacle.
It's just listening to spectators talking about it, because they'll see maybe a little girl or a lad or a man go out against a bigger one, and they just expect the bigger one to beat them and flatten them. And it's all about skill. And you can often see a little beat a big one, and the spectators like going, wow, how's that happened? And then you'll get maybe some spectators who say, well, that looks easy, I'm going to have a go at that. and they come out and they take hold of a more competent wrestler, and they think it's easy until they're flat on the back and they've been beat. So it's as I say, the spectators always stop and watch the wrestling at our events.
Yeah. You've reminded me there, Robert, because the thing that I love most is when you see maybe a young girl wrestler against a boy, and all the spectators think the boy's going to win, but then the girl suddenly has the boy flat on the back, and this massive cheer goes up, doesn't it? And I just feel a bit sorry for the boy, because it looks like they're all against him, but it's clearly that they just thought the girl didn't have a chance. And managed to turn the boy over, and he's on the ground. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, but I think that just shows and conveys the actual engagement of the crowd in the whole event when that happens, because they're just sort of absorbed by it, and then something unexpected happens and they just react, don't they, naturally? And it just shows how much they've all been watching and actually bothering to see what's going on. So anyway, thank you very much for that. Thank you for your time. It's been a great insight into Cumberland and Westmorland wrestling. And, good luck with everything, all the events that you've got coming up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Having spoken to Linda and Robert, I was hot on the track of a star of women's Cumberland and Westmorland wrestling, Connie Hodgson. Connie has been there, done that, and got the T-shirt when it comes to this combat sport. So let's hear what she has to tell us. First of all, what was it, Connie, that got you into Cumberland and Westmorland wrestling?
Well, my dad's always done it. So we grew up going to watch Dad, and he used to take us to academy. He's never pushed us into anything. So we used to originally just go and sit and watch, but that didn't last long, and we always just get up and have a go. I just love it because it doesn't matter. My little cousin is 12 but looks about 7, and is half pint, bless him, but he's one of the best younger wrestlers around. So it's not just. I think when people think wrestling, they just think big and large, and but you don't have to be, and it's such a nimble sport.
Yeah, so you've got your cousin doing it, you're doing it, your dad did it. Does it go further back than your dad?
No, Dad's the first one in our family, and then I'm one of 6, and at some point all 6 of us have done it. And then I don't know if you've come across the Brocklebank family yet.
Yes. Is it Thomas that's one of
Yeah,
those?
Thomas, Graham, and Ben, they're our cousins.
Oh, right, okay.
And then there's a Staten family from Dent, they're also our cousins, and they also do it. But
Wow.
I think it goes back a bit further in the Brocklebank family. I think like their granddad Wilfs did it. And it could even go further back, but no, it was Dad that got us into it.
Okay. And do you belong to a club?
Yeah, at Kendal Wrestling Academy. We
Right.
train at Burnside through the winter months.
Yeah. And then what sort of month do you get outdoors then? When does that start?
So we are on the mats inside from September till March. And then the first show is generally, it's like last weekend in May, but then, that's the first one in for a while. And then second one's then in like June time. And then it's July, and now that it gets a bit mental.
Yeah. And so I guess you're at sort of competitions quite frequently through the summer.
Yeah, quite a lot.
And what have you won in your wrestling career?
So I won 9 world championships.
Wow.
I think 4 in the under 10 stone and 5 in the ladies open, I think, maybe.
So, I mean, that's really impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you
so proud of it?
Yeah. Are you the biggest winner in your family, would you say, or?
Yeah, probably. Well, apart from Dad.
Oh, did he win a lot then, your dad?
He won a few championships over the years.
Yeah.
So, yeah. My little sister's coming for me now.
Yeah. So how old is she?
She's 18, but she's like a good shoulder and head above me. She looks down on me. She makes it known.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're outdoors at the moment. Are you sort of doing something wrestling wise at the moment? Or?
No, nothing wrestling wise. I'm on holiday in Wales.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So when are you back in action with your wrestling then?
Well, I'm not sure when I'm home yet, but there's some at the weekend, so I was going to see whether I could get to eat any of them, but if not, it'll be Thursday at Grey.
And are you at Grasmere this year?
I don't think I am, no. I'm going to try and make it, but it's looking like it might not be doable. But, yeah.
And what do your friends think about you doing this? Have they sort of followed you into the sport, or do they think, it's just something they don't want to do?
They've never actually joined me in doing it. However, I think they've just accepted it because they're both farming girls as well. So, they're used to rough and tumble, but they've never actually got into it.
Oh, right.
But this year, because I'm a PE teacher.
Oh, right.
And this year I actually introduced it onto our curriculum with the year 7s and 8s and year 11s, and they've loved it.
Yes, so you're doing a lot of work in schools, not just with that. I think you go into other schools as well, don't you? Some primary schools?
Yeah, going to Grasmere, Ambleside, Coniston, and Langdale.
So it's great, isn't it, that these young people are seemingly embracing this sport.
And when we've gone to shows, a few of them have taken part as well at shows, which has been really good to see.
Yeah, because I was talking to some Icelandic and French wrestlers last night, and they were saying it's the same sort of thing in their country, that, the young people are really getting into this. So it seems to be something that's got a real life about it at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Really
and that's so good that, it's such a traditional thing. It's great that this new blood is coming into the sport, isn't it?
And keeping it alive and keeping it fresh.
Yeah, that's really important,
Definitely.
isn't it? Because it's such a geographically focused thing, isn't it? In certain regions, that to have sort of those young people embracing it is really important. And I was talking to Eleanor Peacock as well yesterday.
Oh, she's cracking.
Yeah,
She's one to watch.
well, she was saying that, that she dances at some parts of the week and then she does her wrestling, but she's a nimble wrestler, so she's kind of got the moves. So,
and the flexibility within a dancer.
yeah. So, it's not just, the brute force, like you say, is it? There's
Yeah, no,
a lot
definitely
that
not.
needs to happen to make you a good wrestler. So what do you think you've got most out of doing this in your career?
Well, I mean, people might disagree. I do get competitive, but I think I'm a good sports, like show good sportsmanship, and I think that's come because when I was younger, I had two older sisters that I could never beat.
Oh, right.
So it took me years for my time to come. So I think I do appreciate all my wins, and I think I've got definitely got good sportsmanship from it. Which I
Mm,
know people disagree, but I am competitive. But when I lose, it's what I mean. I don't mind. Don't mind losing.
yeah.
So yeah,
And
sportsmanship.
you've got your sister who's 18, so
Yeah.
she's still sort of compete. Is she going to be competing at Grasmere?
Yeah, she'll be at Grasmere.
Yeah. So there'll be sort of cousins there as well, because I think Thomas still wrestles, doesn't he?
Yeah, so there's Thomas, Graham, and Ben in the Brocklebank family, and then there's Miles, John Lucas, and Elianne Stainton from Dent. They're our cousins that are quite big in it, do quite a bit.
Ah, right. Oh, so yes. And that's Glenys, their mum, isn't it?
Yeah, I
Yes.
can.
Yeah, I've been trying to talk to her, but I haven't yet managed to catch up with her. Um, so, why would you say that people should get involved with this? What do you think is the best thing about it for people to get involved with? Is it the exercise or is it the community or?
Yeah, it gets you out over the summer to all your local areas. Um, you can be competitive in it, or even if you just want to go down to the trainings, we have some people that just come to the trainings through winter and don't come out in summer. So it gets them out through the winter once a week. Like you say, it's a community, so we'll see each other and you have a good catch up every time you're there. And then the sporting aspect of it, obviously as a PE teacher, I can't say enough about sport to kids about their physical and mental health. So just for them two aspects as well.
Yeah, that's really important. I mean, the mental health thing, with everybody, it gets you off social media for a start, doesn't it? It
Yeah,
sort of
definitely.
gets you doing something different than fiddling around with a keyboard. And have you ventured abroad and done tournaments abroad, Connie?
Yeah, I've been to the backhold at Brittany. The first year I went, I was actually too young to go. I was only 10, and I think you had to be 11. But have you heard of an absolute legend in the wrestling world called Roger Robson?
Oh, yes, I've been writing
He
about him. Yeah.
he'd wrote a letter to the federation, and they allowed me to go.
Oh, right. So
Yeah, so
you
I
went
went.
despite that.
Yeah, and then I went. I think up until I was about 16.
Mm. So
But
you've
then
got
I've not
lots
been
of
back
experience.
since. Yeah.
Yeah. And is it very different, their style of wrestling?
Uh, yeah, I think because they probably do. I guess with it, you're not holding each other, you're just holding jackets. It's a bit more scarier, but
Mm.
because they go on. But I think once you do it enough, you'll get used to it.
Yeah. And just sort of your recollections of Roger, because I've been writing about this new memorial trophy that is going to be presented for the first time this year. So, what did he bring to the sport? Do you think?
Everything, enthusiasm, love. He just wanted to see everyone there having a go and enjoying it. Like I say, him and Jill took me to France for 6 years, and Jill was literally my mother on them trips.
Mm.
um, yeah, the two people that are greatly missed in the wrestling world.
Yeah. And I think that he did also a lot to introduce women, particularly into wrestling,
Oh,
didn't he?
100%. He had our backs all the way through. And he was one of them people you could go to, and he'd always, give you little coaching points to what you can do to be better. Or yeah, I'd always go, if I knew there was someone I was going to struggle with, I'd try and find him.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
say,
that's
what can
lovely, isn't it?
I do?
Yeah. So I guess you're very pleased that this trophy's been created to honour him.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, that's great. Thanks very much for taking the time on your little break there to
No,
talk to us.
thank you for getting in touch.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Connie.
Thank you.
So there we are. Surely I've got you hooked by now and you're desperate to find out for yourself what all the fuss is about when it comes to this sport. All you need do is jump in the car and arrive at Grasmere Sports on any bank holiday Sunday in August, this year being August the 25th, when this event will be staged just as it has been for over 170 years. Do that and you will get not just this unique form of wrestling, but other Lakeland sports such as fell running, as you may know from my last podcast, hound trailing, as we discussed in a podcast early this year, and a host of entertainment, including a brass band with stilt-walking drummer, a circus performer, all manner of weird and wonderful bikes, a dog show, and a special display of all things sheep. Of course, if you're in a far-flung country, you might not be able to hop on your private plane to join me at Grasmere, but you can still listen to my next podcast, which features more backhold wrestlers, but this time from Iceland and Brittany in France. Until the next time, take really good care of yourself, whether you're hanging out in Hollywood or hurrying around Hertfordshire. And remember, as I always tell you, that life is much more fun when you are sniffing out the very best things to do when poodling around.